Hello, fellow members of the Alliance, and welcome to episode 17 of the Alliance Football Podcast. I'm your host, Rod Villagomez. Find me on Twitter at RJ Villagomez. Find the show on Twitter at Alliance FB Pod. What a great week of football we were treated to. So many great games, so many close games, and just so many great performances on both sides of the ball. I am looking forward to breaking down the three things that we've learned from each of these games, because I got to tell you, week 5 did not disappoint. Delivered on just about every promise the AAF has made up until this point. So let's go ahead and get to those game recaps, because I can't wait to start talking about them. And we start with the first game of the week, which happened to be one of the games that was supposed to be the battle of the undefeateds. Turned out to be the battle of the 4-0 versus the 3-1. It was the 4-0 Orlando Apollos taking on the 3-1 Birmingham Iron in this game. Oh my gosh. Well, I got to tell you, this game was one of those, I know that the hype was good on this game, and it was a good game for one team. And the other team just could not get it together, and as a result is now facing a, I guess, quarterback controversy, as it were. I'm not really sure there's much of a controversy at this point, but let's go ahead and break down the three things that we learned from this game. And that the first one is plain and simple. Orlando is just that good. I mean, Orlando won this 31-14 over the Iron, and really they are just that good. It's amazing to me that this team in this league is dominated so much. They have improved their record now to 5-0. Birmingham falls to 3-2, and Orlando firmly in charge of that first place in the Eastern Division. Just to break it down, how good Orlando really is on offense, they had 468 total yards. 286 of that came from the arm of Garrett Gilbert, and 182 came from the running backs. And Garrett Gilbert, 23 of 35 with 2 touchdowns and 2 2-point conversions, and more importantly, no interceptions. The guy takes care of the ball and finds ways to find the end zone. It's just uncanny how good this guy really is. And you Orlando Apollo fans, I think I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again. You better get used to him and like him now, because, or not get used to him, as it were, because he's not going to be around very much longer. He will get a shot in the NFL. I mean, again, he finished last season with the Panthers, so it stands to reason that the showing that he's putting together this season is good enough to warrant a second look up there in the NFL. I mean, there's a lot of places for him to land to be a good backup quarterback in that league. So, and then you talk about the running game, where the past few weeks it's been D'Ernest Johnson. Davion Smith put his foot in the dirt and decided to come out strong in this game. He had 14 carries for 119 yards, and then that 40-yard scamper that he had about halfway through the third to set up a field goal. I mean, again, he looked strong, and he looked stronger every time they gave him the ball. I mean, he had 14 carries on the night, so he had a pretty good night's work. And just by the looks of the way he ran, this is going to be another one of those running back by committees in Orlando, with Davion Smith making a good case to be that other back. Remember when Akeem Hunt was supposed to be in the mix? We do too. Pepperidge Farm remembers. But he sort of disappeared because there's 2 strong running backs in D'Ernest Johnson and Davion Smith that are taking carries away from him. So, again, Davion Smith really just coming on strong in this game, over 100 yards of rushing. Somebody who's not saw a surprise, I guess, would be Charles Johnson. He just had a Charles Johnson-like day. He had 6 receptions. Well, maybe not. Maybe a little low for a Charles Johnson-type day. He had 6 receptions on 10 targets for 83 yards, a touchdown, and a 2-point conversion. But he, again, was doing great things with the ball, and you definitely can count on that Gilbert to Johnson connection to really come through in that fantasy lineup if you had them, which I know a couple people did who were playing in the main lineup or the main slate, and they found their way to a pretty good payday. But D'Ernest Johnson, we talked about earlier, 5 receptions, 6 targets, 73 yards. He actually did more damage in the passing game than he did the running game this week. So he caught 5 balls on 6 targets for 73 yards, 65 yards after the catch. So what that tells me is that D'Ernest Johnson really just got a huge chunk of yardage, obviously, after the catch. So D'Ernest Johnson doing a really good job as a pass catcher. And then I don't know. He was a surprise to me. I don't know if he was a surprise to anybody else, but Scott Orndorff, 3 receptions on 3 targets for 61 yards. I mean, he didn't have a lot of catches, but he had some pretty good catches. And again, total yards of 61. He definitely came out of the blue for me. I didn't really have him on my radar, but he ended up coming up with a big game for Orlando. And then on defense, that pick 6, right, by Keith Reeser. Holy cow. At the end of the first quarter, I mean, that knocked out Perez. That knocked him straight out of the game. Wondered how long Perez's leash was going to be, and we certainly found out there at the end of the first quarter. And he hadn't looked good up until then anyways, a couple of really failed drives. And then, obviously, with that pick 6 by Keith Reeser, that took him right the heck out. And then really overall, the defense, they held the iron to 14 points. I mean, we knew coming into this week what the iron relied on, and that was their running game, and that was, the defense. And so when the Orlando defense, which is really good in its own right, took away that running game, and obviously we know what the offense can do to defenses, that really took Perez out of his game, and it took already in the first quarter, it him out of the game. So, good on the Orlando defense, which leads us to our second thing, and that Luis Perez, he finally used up all of his slack. Whatever slack he was given, he used it up this week. He finished the game 3 of 7 for 4 yards and an interception, which went the other way. So Luis Perez, his ineffectiveness to really just get the ball down the field into the end zone was it was enough. It was enough. And so, he had that 3 and out on the first iron drive with 2 incomplete passes to Trent Richardson rather. And then, even after the muffed punt that they get the ball back, he throws an incomplete pass to Washington and then they get nothing out of it. So it was a very wasted drive. And Luis Perez's, like I said, his ineffectiveness did not make it out of the first quarter. So in comes the Keith Price era. It has begun now. And what did Keith Price do? Well, he threw the first passing touchdown for the Iron in their history. So kudos to Keith Price. You are now going to be a trivia question. But more than that, he finished the night 18 of 29, 234 yards, a touchdown, and a 2-point conversion. So he had a great night off the bench with 3 quarters of work. I don't know what he could have done with 4 quarters, but with 3 quarters of work, he almost bested Luis Perez's best week with all 4 quarters, where Luis Perez in week 1 against Memphis went 19 of 33 for 252 yards. And since then, he's really only broken 200 yards once. So it was a rough go for Luis Perez. And I don't think that he really had what it took to be the starting quarterback. So we'll see what Keith Price does with that role. And to be honest with you, again, it just looked like the team was a lot more responsive with Keith Price on the field than they were with Luis Perez. And maybe that was because Keith was a little more agile, I guess, with the ball than was Perez. But it just, again, it seemed to me as if the offenses, and this has gone the whole league wide. I mean, we've seen backup quarterbacks, obviously with Zach Mettenberger coming in, Aaron Murray coming in. It just seems to me that the backup quarterbacks have maybe given a little more spark, and maybe should have been starting from day one. I mean, obviously Luis Perez looked good in that first game against the Express, but since then he hadn't been able to string together very many good drives, and obviously we know he wasn't able to throw a touchdown pass at all. And so with Keith Price coming in and finally doing the job, what does that mean? I mean, obviously we know that offensive line play has been kind of an issue in the league so far. And so for quarterbacks to be able to move and get themselves out of trouble is key. And it didn't seem like Luis Perez was able to do that. Consistently. You saw flashes of it, and you saw him, move in the pocket pretty well on occasion. But by and large, it was never enough for him to be able to lead a cohesive drive, at least a cohesive scoring drive with him throwing a touchdown pass. Now, obviously, he could get down in close to the 1 or at least the inside the 5, so Trent Richardson could get in there. But, by the same token, it would have been nice for him to be able to at least throw one, if not more, touchdown passes as the season progressed. So, but if you were a Trent Richardson owner, you got your touchdown. I got to tell you, that guy, I don't know what it is about him, but he found the end zone with a tidy little 2.6 yards per carry average, 8 carries, 21 yards. And he did catch 5 or 4 passes on 5 targets for 37 yards. So I think you got a tidy little 15 points out of him for fantasy, which, again, is good enough to rank up there. But man, and I said it, I think I said it in, I don't really remember where I said it because I talk a lot, but I did say that Trent Richardson, I know that his value, they say, in fantasy came from his receptions, but all of his receptions really have been under 5 yards. And so, with the exception of maybe 1 or 2, he's only gotten under 5 yards per reception, which isn't really a great yards total. I know it equals a point, and you got 4 points out of him in the passing game, but I don't know. To me, it's not worth the risk every week, because what if he doesn't catch passes that week? And I know we're not going to talk fantasy until Friday, but still, I don't know. I can't see paying that much money for him anymore. I think he's on the decline, and I really think that maybe Trent Richardson might be outdone by Brandon Ross, who I thought was going to have a bigger day in this game anyways, but he was actually held to 8 yards on 3 carries, was Brandon Ross, and it was kind of hard to see that happen, but he did have 1 catch for 30 yards and a touchdown, which was the great 30-yard touchdown pass that Price threw. So, that goes a long way in making up for the fact that he had under 10 yards of rushing on the day. But really, that just speaks to, again, how good Orlando's defense played, because, again, there's no offense that's exploiting this Orlando defense, and then there's really no defense that can slow down this Orlando offense. So the question now is, how far does this unbeaten streak go? Do they make it to 10-0 and run the table and maybe win the championship? I know time will tell on that one, but you got to think that it's possible, right? You got to think that there's some way, shape, or form that this team could actually take it all the way in. They're powerful. They're powerful. We talked about it earlier with Gilbert, now Davion Smith, D'Ernest Johnson, Charles Johnson. We didn't even talk about the other receivers in this game because, again, it was the Charles Johnson show. But I mean, you've got Jalen Marshall still. You got Rennell Hall catching 3 passes. I mean, they were only for 23 yards, but you got so much talent on this team that it's just a matter of who's going to blow up at what point. So I don't know. It's dangerous. It's a dangerous team. And then you got guys like Will Hill on defense making all kinds of plays. He was all around the ball. He had 6 solo tackles and a tackle for a loss. But he seemed to be in on just about every single play somewhere in there. And then Jarrell Worthy, who got in for a sack and a couple of quarterback hits. It's just a matter of now, who's going to stop this Orlando defense? Yeah, an Orlando offense. Who's going to stop this team altogether? They got a tall task ahead of them. I really think that the Orlando Apollos have set themselves up as the premier franchise in the AAF this early on. So beating the Birmingham Iron the way they did, 31-14, with a team, like I said, with Birmingham coming in not as good as their record, being 3-1. But now they fall to 3-2, and they've got a lot of work to do, and they've got to get Keith Price in the mix now full time, I think, because I just really believe that this Luis Perez experiment is over. and you just got to give somebody else a chance. Again, it sounded crazy coming in, right? A 3-1 team, you should be saying that the quarterback position is safe, but we all knew that it wasn't the quarterback that had them at that record at that time. So maybe Keith Price will give the shot in the arm that Birmingham needs to keep winning. Now they're on a 2-game slide. So they've got to work on getting back, because a 2-game slide is what, 2/3 of a 3-game winning streak. So, a lot of work to do, but exciting game nonetheless. A lot of exciting plays, a lot of explosive plays. And it was great to watch that. And it was a good way to start the week. I mean, again, even though Birmingham didn't do all that well, I still think watching Orlando's offense and defense go at it the way they did, was a great way to start the week. So, all right, we'll move into how we ended Saturday night here in just a second. So we move into the nightcap of the week. What a second game we were treated to. And I got to tell you, in full confession, I had my Army weekend this weekend, and so I didn't get a chance to watch all these games live, so I ended up watching them later on that evening. So I got home and I watched the first game and I finished it, and then, I had to put the kids to bed, had to just, unwind and everything like that. And then, as I was about to go to sleep, I thought, I'm just going to go ahead and watch this Fleet game and Stallions game on my phone in bed with my headphones in. So I did. So I threw it on because I had it taped and I could watch it, from Xfinity. You can watch from any device. Selling you on cable here for a little bit. I did. I decided to watch it on my phone in bed, and I am so glad I did. I think I finished it. Now, listen, this is Saturday going into Sunday, okay? So this is the turn your clocks forward. So I not only stayed up till midnight to watch the game, I stayed up until 1 o'clock in the morning to watch the game. If you really want to, I know that the time change doesn't happen until 2, blah, 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 whatever, but in a sense, I still lost another hour of sleep to watch this game, but I am still very glad I did, because this was about as entertaining of a game until the next day. Really. The Fleet won this one 27-25, and I'm here to tell you that if any of my friends were on the fence about watching AAF football, I would show them this game and tell them this is what AAF football is really all about. And in fact, this is week 5, and week 5 showed us exactly what we are in for, and even more, because again, this is still only week 5 of a new league, and we're getting good quality football like this. So again, the Fleet win 27-25 over the Stallions in an exciting battle. But here's the 3 things we learned, right? Number 1, maybe Mike Bercovici is not public enemy number 1. I don't think Berco really is public enemy number 1 anymore. He validated himself from that week 1 debacle that he actually maybe deserves to be at the helm of this Fleet. He had 22 of 43. He threw the ball 43 times. His completion percentage isn't the greatest, but 22 completions for 304 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. A far cry from that week 1 performance. So 304 yards and a touchdown. Yeah, that's good. 304 yards is good for a quarterback. So I will give Berco credit where credit is due. He looked good. He looked better. He looked rested. He looked like he was figuring things out better. And I guess maybe you can't necessarily hang everything on week 1 performance, because again, the offense hadn't been together very long and they were still learning everything out. So maybe, just maybe, Mike Bercovici can actually be the guy going forward. He's got to be, because Philip Nelson is gone. So, and it wasn't that he just had, those 22 completions for 304 yards. There was a couple of great throws. One of them was the 45-yarder to Ford, right? That was a beautiful pass. And then he threw another one, a 35-yarder to Baugh. And so, those types of throws, I guess, really show a level of comfortability with the offense now. And we know that he wasn't getting first team reps during those weeks that Philip Nelson was in, obviously, and then Alex Ross. But, I guess with a week of practice again with first team reps, and knowing that he was the guy going into the night, maybe did a little bit for him to actually get the win this time. And really, these quarterbacks, they were all sort of at a disadvantage going into this season, because they obviously didn't know everything yet, and they still had to get comfortable with receivers. They still had to get comfortable with offensive lines. So, Bercovici, I don't know, maybe he's turned the corner. It's weird to say that in 5 weeks, but maybe he's turned the corner. Maybe now he's got the right headspace to be a starting quarterback. So my hat's off to Bercovici. I really, you have the poise, and he had the poise to actually lead that last drive that ended up winning the ball game. You're down. There's a roller coaster of emotions that are going on in the last couple of minutes with, Salt Lake getting down there and scoring. And then, you are backed up on your 25 and you've got to lead this entire offense down the field to score a game winning whatever, right? Be it field goal, or eventually it was a field goal or a touchdown or whatever. But if you've got the poise to throw the ball down the field the way he did, to set up that game-winning field goal and to lead that game-winning drive when you basically, almost didn't have a chance. You'd just gotten punched in the mouth, but Bercovici punched back and landed the blow. So again, good for Bercovici. Like I said a few episodes back, I may give these players a lot of ribbing and a lot of grief, but at the end, I'm going to give them credit too for when they perform well. So, Bercovici, I may have rode you pretty hard after week 1, but I'm happy. I'm genuinely happy that you turned yourself around and were able to put together a performance like this, because, I don't want to see anybody fail. And I love watching good football. And so kudos to Burko for putting on good football this week. And really, again, having the intestinal fortitude to stare down the last drive of the game in order to give your team the win. And it wasn't just Burko alone, right? The second thing that we learned is that San Diego's defense is making a bid for one of the best in the league. I know that they gave up 25 points, but they had some outstanding plays on defense. And look, they have an outstanding player on defense, all right? The once wide receiver, Cam Kelly, with that pick 6 in the fourth quarter, really, again, just turned the game around. And Cam Kelly was turning the game on its heels all night long. I mean, you went all night hearing Cam Kelly's name over and over and over again. He was involved in so many plays that it just turned into the Cam Kelly show. He had 5 tackles. He batted down 4 balls. Had 3 interceptions. That's just unheard of. Obviously, we've never seen that before in this league, but, to have 3 interceptions, obviously one of them for a touchdown, you make your stamp, you make your name in the game by doing stuff like that. So, poor Logan Woodside, he was terrorized all night. Logan Woodside, Josh Woodrum. Again, with these W names, I know who I'm talking about, but I just keep saying the wrong W name. Josh Woodrum was terrorized all night by Cam Kelly. He probably doesn't want to see another Cam Kelly poster or anything for about the rest of his time in the AAF. He's going to be haunted by that. But poor Woodrum, who didn't put together that bad of a game himself. He actually had 380 yards, right, and a touchdown. So he threw for quite a few yards. He threw up the ball 48 times. Obviously, 3 of them landed in the wrong hands, or the right hands if you're a Fleet fan. But, again, Woodrum had a very high yardage total, but he just, again, threw the ball to Cam Kelly 1-3 too many times, in his opinion. But then, obviously not just Cam Kelly's performance, which, again, if you're going to give a player of the week at all, it's going to be Cam Kelly. Like, that guy, he just earned flat out player of the week. It doesn't matter if it's offense, defense, he just earned player of the week because he just killed it, man. And I think he's very comfortable back being in defense. And it just shows. It shows that he probably deserved to be there from day one. And I know Mike Martz is probably kicking himself for trying to start him at wide receiver at first. And it wasn't like he can't catch the ball. We know that. He caught it 3 times in this game, once for a touchdown. So he turned in a pretty good performance himself as a receiver, but as a defensive receiver. But again, Jordan Martin pitched in. on the scoop and score fumble by Terrell Newby in the third. So again, getting a defensive touchdown by way of a scoop and score, you score twice defensively. That's a pretty good game for a defense. So for the Fleet, they're really, I think, jockeying for one of the better defenses, because this is another game in which the defense really did step up and do great things. So, for me and for my money, I really think that the Fleet defense is going to be, it's going to be a formidable defense going forward. And I think that now they're starting to catch their stride. I mean, they got 3 sacks on Woodrum. So, they're doing good things up and getting pressure on him. DeMontre Moore, that guy, 2 sacks himself, right? Hit the quarterback 4 times, forced a fumble. So, it's just a matter of these guys are really starting to come together now and just play some good football. And the Fleet are on the uptick now, as many people were thinking that they might not, because of the fact that their offense would be kind of lost with Mike Bercovici. Look, I'm raising my hand because I didn't give the guy any chance to do anything this week. So I'm glad, like I said, he proved me wrong. But this defense also really went a long way in doing that. When they put up 2 touchdowns themselves, it goes a long way in helping the quarterback to do great things. But here's the thing, okay? Goes into our third point of the game. There is a saying in the Canadian Football League that no lead is safe in the Canadian Football League, right? No lead is safe. So basically what that obviously means is that there's no safe lead. And that at any point, because the structure of the CFL and the rules, there's a lot of the clock stops on first downs and stuff like that. So there's a lot of opportunity for teams to get 2 or 3 possessions in even the last 3 minutes of the game. Well, this last 4 minutes of the game played out a lot like the last few minutes of a CFL game, in that Salt Lake was down 27-11 with 4 minutes in the game, and they ended up scoring 14 points to take the lead, right? I mean, that is in and of itself a huge thing in and of itself. I'm sorry, it wasn't 27-11. It was 24-11 to take the lead. So they went up by a point. And so it's crazy because everybody had pretty much counted out Salt Lake at that point. Obviously with the defensive scores and just the way that they looked punched in the mouth, right? I mean, it was 4 minutes left. You can possibly score, and then you can. I don't know. It's just the odds of doing it were very, very slim. And I think everybody watching at that point had said, well, okay, this game's probably going to be pretty much over. But then, Salt Lake comes down and they score the touchdown later on in the fourth. And then you're thinking, wow, well, okay. Now this is getting a little more interesting. Then you turn around and get a quick 3 and out to get the ball right back. And now you're really in the edge of your seat, because then you march down the field and throw a touchdown pass to take the lead to Truesdale. And wow, what a play that was. There was a lot of emotion, 57 seconds left on the clock. And you almost felt like there was just too much time left on the clock, because this game had been so crazy leading up until that point that sure enough, that absolutely was the case. There was entirely too much time on the clock. Less than a minute was enough time for Bercovici to hook up to Dantes Ford for 45 yards. And what a catch and what a throw that was, because again, that really swung momentum. It took them from 2nd and 10 on the 25 to on their own 25 to 1st and 10 from the Salt Lake 30. And then of course we all know what happened there. A couple of quick Jaquan Gardner runs, one Jaquan Gardner run, one Mike Bercovici. Why can't people just have easy names? Mike Bercovici run up the middle, and sure enough, the field goal from Sam Irwin-Hill. Good. 44-yarder. It was a good kick. It was a good hold, and it was just a great win for San Diego overall. And again, another ridiculously entertaining game to watch. And I was just so happy that I stayed up till the wee hours of daylight saving time morning to do it. So again, the final in that one, it was the San Diego Fleet outlasting by one good 45-yard chuck, the Stallions 27-25. Now San Diego 3-2, and up there tied for first place now. Salt Lake now 1-4, and they are searching for answers. They got to figure out. I think really what it all boils down to is they just got to stay consistent. They didn't look good for about 3 quarters, woke up in the fourth, but they need to find a way to stay consistent. So, all right, like I said, another great entertaining game that the AAF gave us, and I'm so excited that we got a chance to watch it. So, all right, let's come back after halftime and break the rest down. So those of you that were able to be up on that Sunday morning and you didn't reset your clock at the wrong time, you were treated to a very exciting game as the first game of the week, or first game of the day rather, on Sunday, as the Atlanta Legends topped the Memphis Express 23-20 in another close game, right? Another entertaining game in the AAF. Now look, and I understand that a lot of these games seem to start out a little slow and that the pacing of it seems to be a little bit choppy at first, but if you hang with the games until the end, they really start to get good, and there's a lot of great stuff to take away from these games. So again, if you're listening to this, I'm preaching to the choir again, and I'm not going to tell you guys what you already know, but this game again was super exciting for me. I do enjoy watching close games, and I really do love when the teams, mount good comebacks and make good storylines. So this game had it, and this game had, right from the start, Aaron Murray. Should have been starting from day one, it looks like, right? I mean, this is a team that looks completely different with Aaron Murray behind the center. And this is the way that it's been for a couple of other teams too. You make a quick quarterback change and now all of a sudden it looks like a new team. So this is it. Aaron Murray finally getting his chance to start. In the first start, I know that the broadcasters, the folks over there were making such a huge deal out of the fact that this is like the first time he started in, 15 years or something. No, I'm just kidding. Not that long, but a long time. They kept making up all that. Well, yeah, it's the first time he started in 100 years. But Aaron Murray starting for the first time since college. And he looked good. He looked comfortable. He looked like he was ready to lead the team. And really, the team looked like a lot more explosive with him as a starter. I mean, and we saw it when he came in relief of Phil Simms the week before, where the team just looks kind of completely different. And I don't know what it is about. I mean, I've never played the game. I don't know what the psyche is for folks that are coming in and playing with a certain quarterback. I don't know if it's the vibe, if it's the leadership aura. I mean, obviously with Christian Hackenberg, you knew that. I just felt like they didn't follow him because he wasn't a person worth following. Enter Zach Mettenberger, and he's got more of a professional approach to it. He's got more poise, and obviously Memphis seemed to respond better to Mettenberger. And it's the same, I think, with Murray, where Phil Simms, I don't know what it was. I mean, this was a lackluster offense leading up until week 5. It literally just did not, there was nobody that really stood out. And if you're scouring the rosters and building fantasy lineups, you could almost all but forget about any sort of Atlanta Legends offensive player. But this is not the case anymore. Aaron Murray has actually stepped in and looks to be a good enough leader to start turning this Atlanta season around as much as you can turn it around in 5 more games. But, it seems like they're on the right track to make some improvements where they needed to make improvements. Murray was 27 of 43. Again, another person that put the ball up a ton of times. 306 yards with a touchdown and a 2-point conversion. So, again, a very solid outing for Aaron Murray, who really just, I feel like, led this team to a good place and a good foundation for the rest of the season. He was the guy that led that game-winning drive after the Tyson Graham junior interception. And that's the thing. So when they got the ball back after that interception, right? With about 3 minutes left to go in the game. He actually led a great drive that basically milked the last 3 minutes off the clock. And that's hard to do in the AAF anyways, as it is, because again, with clock rules being what they are, but he managed to put a drive together that milked the entire clock and set up, Koo Young Ho to kick the game-winning field goal. So, there's a lot to be said about a leader that can do the right things at the right time and take your team to a win. I know there's a lot of people that were thinking we could have had overtime because of the fact that, both of these teams look like they may have good defenses enough to keep big plays from happening, or Aaron Murray might not have marched the team down in enough time to kick a field goal. So a lot could have been different. We could have been looking at an overtime situation, but instead what we ended up looking at was Aaron Murray taking his team down for the win. So kudos to Aaron Murray for winning his first start in forever and for making this Atlanta Legends offense look like a legitimate AAF offense. I was pretty impressed with the way it went because, for the quarterback to be good, the pass catchers have to go and be good. And so that's our second thing that we're going to take away is that the pass catchers, they're actually picking up steam now that Aaron Murray is looking good. You had Shantavius Jones, who had 6 targets. He got 5 of them from 89 yards. Bug Howard, right? We've got Pig Howard and Bug Howard. I don't know what it is about Howards and their anamorphic, tendencies, but Bug Howard had 5 targets. He caught 3 of those for 59 yards. Keith Tobridge out of nowhere, 4 receptions on 4 targets for 56 yards. And then the running back, Taron Folston, he had 6 targets, caught all 6 of them, 23 yards and a touchdown. He had a hell of a fantasy day because on top of those 6 targets and 6 catches, he had 11 carries for 83 yards and a touchdown. So Taron Folston really putting on a clinic where, again, Denard Robinson was supposed to be the main event, and he only had a carry for -6 yards. So that's not a good stat day for Denard Robinson. So Folston stepping up and taking a lot of those carries and a lot of that work, and he's doing it well. So that surprise from Taron Folston is good. I mean, you can't have too many offensive weapons, right? And to have another one that sort of came out of the woodwork of the first 4 weeks is good. And it's good for Aaron Murray, and it's good for the Legends, and it's good for the league. So we're happy to see big performers like Shantavius Jones, Bug Howard, Keith Tobridge, and Taron Folston support Aaron Murray in the opportunity to get this Atlanta Legends team off the schneid. I mean, both came in 1-4, right? So now the Legends leave 2-4. The Express dropped to 1-4. I'm sorry, they both came in 1-3. Math is hard. So the Express leave 1-4, and the Legends leave 2-3. So again, there was a lot of great. God, there's so much great stuff going on. And look, the third thing we're going to walk away with is that both defenses are really good. I mean, we knew that the Memphis Express had a great defense coming in, obviously with Mike Singletary being up, but the Atlanta Legends actually really looked good in this game as well. So both defenses played really well, to be honest with you. I mean, again, there was a few offensive explosions that made this game what it was, but both defenses really played very well. There was 7 sacks in this game, 4 for Memphis and 3 for the Legends. And then, of course, with Tyler Graham Jr.'s huge interception, there was some defensive plays that were being made, and it wasn't like too many. It wasn't like the offenses ran away with this one. I mean, there was good performances, like I said, with Aaron Murray throwing for 306 yards. But, again, it wasn't like everybody was lighting up the sky. It was just a matter of a bunch of solid plays here and there, or some strung together, but defense has really shown through and put a lot of pressure on the quarterback and made a very hard day for both Berkovici and Mettenberger. So again, this is a couple of teams that needed to put it all together and see what they had, and we do know what both of them have, and they both have some promising attributes going forward. Again, Memphis is still not completely out of this, and I think that if Mettenberger can really just get it together and keep it together for all 4 quarters, I think that this Memphis Express team, stands a chance. Because here's the thing, right? Now we have 5 games left. Okay. So if Memphis can win out, and find a way to, be 6-4, it's not going to happen, but let's say they do. Sorry, Daniel and Michelle, it's probably not going to happen. But Birmingham is now on the downward slide. So if they lose another one, Atlanta wins another one and loses a couple more. I mean, second place is not completely out of the reach of the Memphis Express, given that, with Birmingham looking kind of, I guess, suspect, it's still kind of a ball in there in the West, or in the East rather. So second place could be within reach if they can just rally behind Mettenberger and stay there for all 4 quarters. Whereas, for the Legends, they have a little easier road to hoe because they're actually only down by a game, right? The Birmingham's 3-2, they're 2-3. So the gap between them is a little bit smaller and a little more manageable. So second place for them could be a possibility too. So we're looking at a good home stretch for the last 5 games of this season, because the first 5 games really set the table, and this is actually going to go a long way in setting up the rest. But really, the biggest takeaway of this entire game was just this is entertaining football, and I'm glad that we got to watch yet another close matchup, and it was a good way to start the day. It was a good way to start the Sunday, and watching a competitive game really that came down to the end. So I was very excited. So all right, that is pretty much the takeaway from that game, or takeaways, the 3 things that we need to learn from that game. So let's go on to the nightcap. Well, we started the weekend off with a great game, and we ended the weekend off with an almost better game, I would argue. It was the San Antonio Commanders in what I thought, like I said, it was going to be a pretty close game, and it was going to be a mini shootout, and it kind of ended up that way. But the Commanders topped the Hotshots 29-25, and this was a game that had so many exciting moments that it was just hard to pick 3 things to walk away from this game. But I'll start with number 1 and do the best that I can to make this the 3 things to take away from this game. But number 1 is that I think defenses have now figured out this Arizona running attack, and it's sad because it looked really impressive early on, and now it just sort of fizzled out as defenses catch up to the 3-headed monster of Tim Cook, who had 12 carries for 33 yards and a touchdown. Justin Stockton had 5 carries for 29 yards, and Jarrell Presley, who was one of the league leaders coming into this, only had 8 carries for 20 yards. He could not get off the ground, figuratively and literally. But John Wolford had 5 carries of his own for 29 yards. So where this used to be a couple of weeks ago, one of the more formidable backfields in the league, this San Antonio Commanders defense had them figured out and held them all to in and around 30 yards and under for the night. So, the running game is an important part of the offense, and for more than just, the fact that you need to run to be able to throw. But when you can control clock, when you can, get big yards on first down, it makes the whole offense run smoother, because now there's more of a chance on second and third down for you to be in short yardage situations, and it opens up your playbook, like they say all the time. But a good running game is, in my opinion, the bedrock of a good offense. And if you don't have a good running game, then you're probably not going to have a good offense. So the fact that Arizona was able to, the first couple of weeks, have such a high flying pass attack, right, with John Wolford, except the week that he was down, and then to have Jarrell Presley, and then out of the woodwork come Tim Cook and Justin Stockton, not John Stockton. He didn't play basketball, but Justin Stockton, those guys complimented Jarrell Presley. And now, with defenses catching up to these guys, it's taken away part and one of the most important parts of that Arizona offense. And so San Antonio did a great job of taking away the run and really just bottling up that running attack all night long. They couldn't get anything off the ground. The Hotshots couldn't. And, for them, that's part of their identity and part of the what's made them so successful going into the week. And now we're starting to see the hot shots kind of come frayed at around the edges. And it's, they're favored to win the whole thing, right? That coming into it, they were one of the favorites to win the whole thing. Now they sit at under 500 at 2-3, and they are really just not looking like the team that they were to open up the season. So when part of that is bottling up one of the league's leading rushers, then you got to go back to the drawing board, because next week you're not going to be able to rush the way you want to if the defense watches the tape and sees exactly the tendencies that the Commanders used the week before. It's no secret that obviously they're all watching tape. So if people have got Jarrell Presley figured out and his other backs, Tim Cook and Justin Stockton, then I think Arizona might be in for a long last second part of the season. Because Wolford actually, he threw the ball the way he was supposed to. He had 19 of 33 for 246 yards. The problem was he threw 3 interceptions. So again, this Commanders defense was all in for this one. They got the 3 interceptions and basically held the running game in check. So they were making Wolford try to beat them with his arm. He did get those 2 touchdowns, which was good, but again, the running attack has been such a huge part of Arizona's offense going into it, and San Antonio did a good job of stopping it, and then, going one further and actually getting those 3 interceptions. So, the number 2 thing that we need to take away is that, look, at as much as those San Antonio Commanders defense was explosive, the offense, man, what the heck? So this thing just jumped out. This whole game just jumped out to a crazy start for San Antonio with that pick 6 on the first drive by Darren Smith, who ended up with 2 interceptions in the game. He almost had 3. It was almost another one. And then he had 2 pass defenses on the game as well. But he was all over the place. He was breaking up things left and right and getting in the mix on so many defensive plays. But that first pick 6 set the tone, I think, for at least the first half of the game, and in a game where everybody thought it was going to get completely out of control, really quick. But we ended up having a good game by the end of it, but it just looked like it was getting out of control super quick. 14 points in the first quarter, 12 in the second quarter, and you go into halftime up 26-0. And, you just feel like, okay, now you just set it on autopilot and go and maybe just run the second half out with some Pharaoh. But, they're explosive. That offense, and the defense. So the offense side answered back with a 54-yard touchdown to Big Play McKay, right? On the very next drive, the offense has the ball, and they throw it down the field for 54 yards and a touchdown. And that was a hell of a throw, too. I was pretty impressed with that. And then they open it up and they have a 57-yard pass to Alonzo Moore in the second quarter to set up a touchdown. And these explosive plays, I know they talk about it all the time on the broadcast, but these are all explosive plays and they're all big plays. So, a 54-yard touchdown, a 57-yard pass to Alonzo Moore, then Kenneth Pharaoh gets in the mix and has a little small screen pass, takes it for 43 yards in the fourth quarter. There's some very explosive players on this San Antonio Commanders team. And I think, again, the fact that they walked away from tonight with a win goes a long way in solidifying where they are in the West, and it's very, very tight in the West. They're first place now. They're tied with the Fleet. But again, the Hot Shots are not far behind in Salt Lake, still sitting out there at 1-4, isn't completely out of the mix either. Still a few games left to try to get in it. But, here's the thing, right? The Commanders, they sit at first, but they have a very tough schedule coming up now too. And they very well could fall somewhere in that third area too, if they're not careful. But right now they've got the players to make it. And I think they do, obviously deserve a seat at the table with their explosive plays. So a lot of them were on display in this game against the Hot Shots. So the third thing that we need to take away from this game is that there is zero quit in Arizona, though. And that's the thing about this game, right? San Antonio came in up so big in that second half that they really, they were still running their offense. It wasn't like they were trying to give up, and it wasn't like they're trying to to just kind of milk the clock out because they knew that they still had a half to play. But the Arizona team just did not quit in the second half. I mean, they were down 17 points going into the fourth quarter. It was something that Arizona had a lot. They had a huge uphill battle. In fact, even coming out of the half, really before even the fourth quarter, right? There was that long drive. San Antonio was just, they got the ball to start it, and they just grinded the clock down, grinding to 8 minutes and 7 seconds. And then Woodside got intercepted, right, by Dargan. And so now all of a sudden that gives the Hot Shots a big shot in the arm, right? Which they actually converted on a huge pass to, can we just give Rashard Ross some sort of, I don't do sound effects on the show. I don't, but I have to this time. And I think this is the right button because I've never used sound effects, but this is there it is. There it is. And I'm only doing this because Rashard Ross, I mean, the guy, you can't really stop him. He had that catch for 45 yards from Wolford, and that gave the Hot Shots some life. It finally got him out of the hole. It finally got him on the board, and they had something to cheer about there in the third quarter. So for that to happen, it was a huge kudos, especially after that drive that looked like it was going to keep going. San Antonio held the ball for a long time, and then they turn around and they get a short drive out of the Commanders. And then, from there, it just sort of kind of muddled its way into the fourth quarter. But yeah, for Rashard Ross, 5 receptions, 6 targets, 106 yards, a touchdown, and a 2-point conversion. He was a beast out there. And he pretty much has lived up to being one of the top receivers in the league. But then we go and we have 2 tries, right, and an onside. And man, if Marquise Bundy did not fumble that ball, who knows what could have happened for the Hot Shots. But, second effort is one thing, third effort is another. But doggone if that fourth and fifth effort did not just completely blow it for the Hot Shots. They could have, I don't know what they could have done. I mean, it's just a matter of, they probably could have maybe scored and then had some time also. Now, granted, it didn't really hurt them that much because, they turned around and forced a 3 and out and ended up scoring and then getting another onside. But you just kind of think to yourself, what could have been? What could have been if he wouldn't have? Because then maybe there's a little more time on the clock. Maybe you don't give it back with 1:13 left on the clock when you didn't get when Wolford is sacked on that second onside attempt. I don't know. It just, you feel like Arizona had fought so hard in that fourth quarter only to come up short. And it was pretty sad to see because that was such a great game going into that. And it was a lot of grit. And when Arizona started to come back in that game, a lot like the Fleet game, you were on the edge of your seat thinking to yourself, wow, do we really have an opportunity to watch a giant comeback here? And then the onside attempt. And when Marquise Bundy caught that, I jumped out of my seat because I couldn't believe what I just watched. I mean, that was a heck of a play to get there. And then all of a sudden he fumbled it. And it was I don't know. If you're an Arizona Hotshot fan, you rode the entire roller coaster of emotions in that span of about, 10 seconds, 15 seconds. You went from super high elated to ridiculously banging your head against the desk. And then, of course, you get the 3 and out. You're like, wow, man, that was good. That didn't cost us a whole lot of time. And, now maybe we have an opportunity to get the ball back and march down the field. And you do. And then you're super excited. But then you watch your next onside attempt go by the wayside. And that just definitely hurt. I really honestly thought we were about to witness another amazing comeback in the league, in the alliance. And I was all for it. So I don't know. Again, the major takeaways from this game is that, like I said, the Commanders, they are explosive. They've got a great offense when they can put it together. They got a lot of weapons back there and Big Play McKay, even Alonzo Moore peeking out, Kenneth Farrow, who actually ended up getting hurt. Now, I don't remember if I saw him come back in because he got hurt really late. So, I think he did come back in, but that's something to keep an eye on if you are a fantasy owner or if you're somebody that builds those daily fantasy lineups. Because if Kenneth Farrow is out, then Terry Williams is in, and he's definitely a good guy to snatch up off the waiver wire if you haven't already. But anyways, yeah. So again, this was it was just a great way to end the weekend. I was very impressed with the level of play that we witnessed in this game, because again, this was a big back and forth game, and a game that I thought it was going to be kind of a high scoring game too. So I'm glad we were treated to that, and I'm glad that we got to see a very good outing by both teams. So that'll do it for what we could take away from these games. Like I said, I'm glad that we had a great week 5. I'm looking forward to week 6, and so let's go ahead and wrap up the show. And that will end another episode of the Alliance Football Podcast. Episode 17 is complete. We are done wrapping up week 5, and we are looking forward to an outstanding week 6. And of course, on Friday, we'll have all those game previews for you. John Ferguson will come back, and we'll talk fantasy 4-pack again for fan ball. We had a lot of good lineups going on last week, and I'm excited to talk to John about some of those and what we got for value plays coming up. And then a couple of good special guests for you to look out for this week as well. So I'm not going to blow the surprise. You're going to have to listen to find out. So again, a wonderful week 5. I'm glad that you all made it to the end of this episode. Thanks for listening as always. And I want to thank each and every one of you. Look, I say it every week and I gush every week, but I got to tell you, this is one of the better things that I've got going right now as far as being able to talk AAF and to have such a great community of folks to talk AAF with. And I'm looking forward to the next 5 weeks, and then on to the playoffs. So, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's just finish up this week. Look forward to next week, and I'm telling you right now, I'm looking forward to it. So, is it Friday yet?